Hello everybody and welcome to the Cold Front. I'm Dan Giroux.
And I'm Sean Bailey. Today we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite weather movie, Twister.
Absolutely. Now, if you've watched the movie, you'd know that there's a lot going on that might not be accurate in terms of actual weather phenomena, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's really been a driving force between a lot of people getting into the weather field, and we're going to act to correct some of its mishaps.
Now, I think the biggest thing that I want to point out is probably the lack of something called a mesocyclone when they show a tornado in the actual movie. Now, if you don't know what a mesocyclone is, basically it's just rotation in the upper or in the clouds, and mesocyclones are generally what are associated with tornadoes. Now, I bring this up not because it's not possible to have, I guess I got to be careful with my phrasing here. If you don't have a mesocyclone and there's some sort of funnel, that's not called a tornado anymore. It's called a landspout. And that's a lot of what you saw in that movie. Now, the myth about this isn't so much that, landspouts can't happen. Well, they're not as common, but they're also, it's very important to realize that they're not going to be nearly as strong as a normal tornado would be. And that's kind of the point we got to drive home here.
Right. Like you were saying about non-mesocyclonic storms, landspouts also form differently than tornadoes. I mean, typically, like you said, you have a lowering of the cloud deck, and that indicates where your mesocyclone is. We didn't really see too much of that
not at all.
In any of the 4 tornadoes that they saw. The last one had a bit of a
there was like rotation and a little bit of lowering, but not a lot.
Yeah, not too much in the way of any sort of structure. And that's really what we look for when we chase out there. Typically when we have non-mesocyclonic storms, we also tend to get waterspouts as well.
Yep.
That's landspouts and waterspouts, dust devils, are all kind of in that category where they don't have any sort of upper level forcing to help them spin away.
Absolutely. So that's kind of a few interesting things that that happened early on in the movie. There were a couple other times as well when it happened.
Yeah, when they had the tornado over the water, when the cows were flying around, everyone remembers that scene.
Well, but at that point it was a waterspout.
Yeah, true, it was a waterspout. But I mean, it didn't form initially as a waterspout. It was
Yep.
a tornado that moved over water. So it's a water tornado.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I found it weird how the tornadoes go away. Almost every tornado that is in that movie dissipates within the next 2 minutes after they get hit by it. So they don't necessarily get the full effect of a tornado. And to be honest, it goes from this gigantic structure to
Nothing
like
in no seconds flat. And normally what you would see is a gradual dissipation, but also you would see, tornadoes actually have stages in and of themselves. And as a tornado dies, you're going to see a kind of ropey stage. And there were a couple of tornadoes that looked kind of ropey, but they looked ropey to begin with, not towards the end anyway. So it's, as that tornado dies, it kind of thins out a bit, and then it starts to twist and turn, and you get to see some cool shapes out of it. But there's definitely stages during these tornadoes, and the movie doesn't show that.
Right, it just jumps from A to B to bye.
Yep.
Also, I mean, with how the tornado's damage works too, the debris associated with tornadoes, some of these rope stages tend to be very weak. I mean, typically 90% of tornadoes are F0 to F1. So you're not going to have giant semi-trucks spinning around these things, and you're not going to have as much debris flying around. However, some of the more major tornadoes, which are associated with this outbreak, tend to be very, very, they play with a lot of toys.
Yes, they do. Now, he brought up the semi-truck, and that's another interesting little factoid here, because as a semi-truck comes after him, or towards the two main characters, and Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, a semi-truck that big is going to weigh a lot of oh, it's going to be really heavy.
Yeah.
And their truck is going to weigh a lot less. Now, if a truck that is very massive and has a lot of weight is coming towards you, but your car isn't flying, there's a problem.
Yeah. Okay, that thing basically gave it a love tap.
Yeah.
Like
Uh-huh.
A giant semi-truck, no, it's not gonna just.
No.
No. So that was a very. They should have been gone.
Yes, they should.
And I mean, in addition to the semi-truck flying like that, the fact when it exploded and they were driving away from the storm, the fact that they survived that magically with being so close to the explosion, and that they didn't feel any sort of tremor or.
Yeah, no, they were still able to go right through the flames. And,
Through the fire and flames.
Yeah, but, you know, the other thing to point out is I don't know how easy it is to truly pick up a big semi like that's got that much weight in it, because obviously the tanker had to be full for it to explode like
Yeah.
that. But then, to actually get picked up the way it did,
Yeah.
that again takes a lot of force. And at that stage, you're easily talking EF4, EF5, I would assume, right?
Right.
So,
even with an EF4 and EF5 strength, I mean, typically we do see semi-trucks flipped over,
Yeah.
moved. I don't think I've ever seen a tornado pick up
exactly.
a semi-truck like that and spin it around
Yeah.
like it did, and especially a full one. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, yeah, tornadoes are very powerful and they're known to treat cars like 5-year-old cars or 5-year-old toys.
Toys like Hot Wheels. And
Yeah, but I don't know if that would have worked so well.
I don't think so either. And, but then they try and market the truck that they're driving in as being this big, tough car that can't be messed with, apparently. I don't get that.
Yeah.
But then, keeping along with that little theme is the part where they drive through a house.
Yeah.
They drive right through a house, right through the side of the wall and comes out the other side. Not a lot of damage on the truck. You would expect the front end to be a bit smashed up. That didn't happen. And they were able to go right through the house, untouched. No big deal. Anybody can do it.
Yeah. I mean, I want to try that out.
I don't want to, because I know that's not going to work.
I mean, my brother has a deer catcher on the front of his car, so I wonder if maybe they were
A
thinking
deer
that,
catcher?
Yeah,
Is
it
that,
legitimately has like a battering ram on the front of it.
it's called the push bar.
I call it a deer catcher though.
It's probably not good.
But yeah, I'm surprised there wasn't a lot of damage associated with that, because it didn't have any sort of front end plow or anything. And
No, it didn't.
I mean, just the fact that the house was rolling like a dollhouse, it was kind of strange.
And yeah,
It stayed together. It didn't like fall apart and roll. It just.
yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. I mean, even if you have a weak foundation on top of that,
Yeah.
there's going to be weak parts of the house that go before the actual house itself.
Right.
And you don't see that. You see the entire house. Again, the way the house was moving would probably be a little more realistic of how the tanker truck should have been moving.
Right, rolling around.
Exactly. And so to see that, and then to see him drive through, drive through that house like a hot knife through butter made absolutely no sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, just how they portrayed some of the, because I mean, typically when you have an F5 tornado go over a house, it doesn't keep the house together.
No, it
tears it to shreds. So, yeah, it should have been gone.
That's all right. Now coming up, we're going to talk more about this because I know you guys are really excited. So stay tuned, guys.
We're always and we're on VUTV.
I'm Justin Bowie,
And I'm Kristen Schaefer.
and we're members of IEEE, and we're on VUTV.
We're the Acapellas. We're on VUTV.
Hey, we're Willoughby Sprig, and we're on VUTV.
We're best buddies and we're on VUTV.
And welcome back to the Cold Front. We're going to continue our discussion about the movie Twister. Now, one of the main things that also happened, in addition to the big EF5 tornado, was the one at the movie theater, which was also a very, very strong storm. So typically, nighttime tornadoes are not as strong as ones that happen during the day, but you can still get some of those storms to develop. However, usually they're more catastrophic at night.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a couple of different factors when it comes to nighttime storms. Yeah, they're not necessarily as strong because the daytime peak heating is gone.
Right.
That's obviously not to say that they can't be strong tornadoes. It's just, on average, they're generally weaker. But that's not the point, you know, you want to drive across. The reason they're so dangerous at night isn't because of their strength. It's because people are sleeping. People aren't readily near a radio or a television set all the time, or, you know, maybe even necessarily by their phones, which isn't so true anymore. But, you know, at night, it's a lot more dangerous because people are sleeping and all that stuff, like I just alluded to, but also because, you know what? You can't see the storm coming towards you. And that's another dangerous part, because if it's coming at you and you can't see it, you know, you might think you're okay, but then the storm's right on top of you.
Right. I mean, they didn't even see the storm until it started tearing apart the movie, The Drive-In.
That was kind of realistic, though, wouldn't it?
True. Yeah. I mean, how it tore it apart. I mean, that's the exact opposite of what happened to the house. Although it was kind of weird seeing the images still being projected around the tornado.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, what's weird about that situation too is that they were on the trail of all these storms all day. The fact that they didn't pick up on that there might be a storm later, kind of.
Well, yeah, that is actually a good point, because they weren't exactly prepared for anything, and they were just kind of taking it easy and getting food and taking showers and all that stuff, thinking everything's okay, and then boom, the tornado's right on top of them.
Yeah, and I mean, for Bill Paxton, who proclaims that he has a psychic connection to the weather, I think
that's a good point. When you see him early on in the show or in the movie pick up that dirt, yeah, it's gonna be a good day for tornado chasing.
Yeah,
He didn't actually say that, by the way, but that's kind of what he implied.
Yeah, I mean, typically we don't have outbreaks like that.
No.
Which we would predict large-scale tornadoes like that. I mean, granted, we've nailed some of the big ones, like April 27th.
Yeah.
Joplin, we actually knew about a few days ahead of time as well, that there was a likely chance of storms like that. However, having that sort of outbreak and with that many large tornadoes was
unique. It was
yes.
definitely unique.
It's not, when people think about storm chasing, I mean, you see Reed Timmer or people on the Discovery Channel chasing storms left and right, like go, boom, 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 boom. That's really not how it is. Most of the time spent chasing, I mean, at least with Valpo, is you're driving to where you want to set up for the next storm. You're not always like, oh, there's a storm. Okay, that storm dissipated. Oh, wait, there's another storm over there. You prepare yourself for the next storm, and it's not going to be this rapid fire of F4s and F5s like it is in the movie. So there's a very unrealistic trend, and you don't get to see that a lot, especially in even shows like Storm Chasers or Twister, because usually most of the time you spend at McDonald's or a gas station.
And it's very mundane at that. You know, you're not just, hey, this is exciting. We're gonna get. You're not gonna get a storm every day on top of that. So even if you could see, it might take a week before you get in a good spot. It might take months. You might not see anything all summer. So it's actually a very mundane sport when it actually comes down to it. But when you actually see it, it's a lot different, and it's totally worth it.
It's an adrenaline rush for sure. I mean, you're seeing something that you're so fascinated with, just developing in front of you, and that's kind of the reward with storm chasing, is you're using all the tools that you learn here or learn throughout your meteorology career, and you see right in front of your face. You can't see that in a textbook.
No, you can't. But before we get too far off topic, we also want to talk about a scene early on in the movie when they actually hide underneath a bridge to avoid a tornado. Now, we need to stress something. Like Sean just alluded to, that is a very bad idea, okay? Because what happens when you hide underneath a bridge, and I've actually seen this a couple of times with videos in the early 90s and such, people will hide under a bridge, but what actually happens, instead of sheltering you, you're actually putting yourself in a lot more danger, because in a way, and I don't know if this is the perfect way to explain it, but the winds, when they go through the tunnel, kind of concentrate in a way, and it actually speeds up when it goes underneath the tunnel. So you're actually putting yourself in more danger.
Yeah, so the winds will definitely strengthen underneath an overpass, and yeah, I mean, you're underneath a concrete pillar, which is safe, but you're still experiencing those high bursts of winds that are just going to send you straight out of that underpass. So very bad idea to be underneath an underpass, and especially bad idea to be in a car underneath.
Oh, absolutely.
Even underneath an overpass. You may think, okay, I can't go under an underpass, but I can park my car under it and I'll be safe. No, the tornado will still have enough strength to definitely push your car. I remember seeing video from a 1999 tornado outbreak through Oklahoma, and there were people that went underneath an underpass. They were lucky enough that the tornado was very weak, because if it had been any bit stronger or had gone right over in the underpass, or right through the underpass, they would have been gone.
Wasn't there a video though where the tornado did go over the underpass? And actually, I think it might have been one of Reed's, because I remember it's the one that I keep remembering, and that I've seen numerous times over the years. And I wonder if that's I thought that it went right over it, but it was a very weak tornado, so they were very lucky.
Yeah, but I mean, as much as weak tornadoes are typically come out of storms, you definitely not the place to be.
No.
It'd be much better to go in a ditch. And typically where you have underpasses or overpasses, you also have nice ditches to go in. So those are a lot more safer. Obviously shelter yourself, have something over your head for flying debris, which overall wasn't very evident in the movie.
No.
They had a few trees, but for the most part,
power lines.
Yeah, well, even the power lines.
Yeah.
When they had the jumper tornado, I think that was the third one. For the most part, it was flying around, and it didn't touch the power lines until it was right on top of them. Typically, you have things flying around, and power is out well before it's right in front of you. So be prepared, and obviously avoid dead power lines, because usually they're not dead.
No, they're not usually at all. In fact, you see when a tornado, if you've seen a video of a tornado going over power lines, you get a pretty big power flash. And that's when you know that it's messed something up somewhere. But then at the same time, that those lines, even though they're just hanging there, they're not dead. They could still zap you, so you want to stay away from those.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing I do want to point out, though, as well, is that you want to just kind of, if you can avoid it at all, just don't even be outside when there's severe weather. There's no reason to.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this next, but the lead times of tornadoes, and that's the ultimate goal of what the people in Twister, that was their main goal, to increase the warning times. So when we come back, we'll talk more about that, as well as some other myths associated with this movie.
We're a Student Alumni Association, and we're on VUTV.
We're Alliance, and we're on VUTV.
I'm Keaton Glogly, and I'm on VUTV.
We're UPC, and we're on VUTV. We're VUVOX, and we're on VUTV.
We're from Chase Bank, and we're at VUTV.
And welcome back to the Cold Front. Now we got to talk about a couple of different things relating to Twister. Now, if you remember seeing the big machine in the actual movie, it was called Dorothy.
Yep.
And basically what it did was they set it in front of a tornado, and it was supposed to collect all this data. It would send these things flying up into the tornado to collect all this data and try and model a tornado and all that stuff. There's actually a real life, it's not the same thing, but there was something similar that they did back in 1985.
Yep, the National Severe Storms Laboratory, NSSL, which is the precursor to the Storm Prediction Center that we now know and love, went out in 1985 and did a very similar thing. They named their instrument Toto. I guess
There's
correlating.
Slight parallel, yep.
Correlating there. And they were trying to do the same objective of putting something inside a tornado to get measurements. It did not work very well because just of the inherent danger of doing something like that. As stressed in the movie, positioning it as well as having it heavy enough to avoid debris was a main concern, and overall, it really wasn't able to, the technology wasn't able to work very well for NSSL. I mean, nowadays we have people driving into tornadoes to try and get those sort of things, but they're not sending little balls and with duct taped Pepsi cans to help them fly.
But I kind of want to pause for a second here and let you know, he was talking about NSSL being the precursor to the Storm Prediction Center. That's not exactly true, because NSSL was more, it's a research kind of a thing.
How they portrayed it, though, was more so like predicting the storms.
And that's kind of, I guess you could consider it another myth. But at the time of the movie, the reason they used NSSL wasn't because of, it wasn't because it wasn't accurate. It was more because that was around the transition period from, I believe, when they were moving from Kansas City to Oklahoma. And that's, so the important thing there is that was kind of before, like, around the birth of the Storm Prediction Center, and it wasn't as, it didn't have its strengths quite yet. And so people associated, they didn't necessarily associate it with NSSL, but it was the best way to kind of bridge the gap because of the transition period.
Yeah, so my apologies.
That's okay. It's not a big deal. I mean, I just want to point
because I mean, nowadays we do go to the SPC for all of our severe weather, especially if you're looking for what tornado watches are issued. That's who you go to for that.
SPC does that, and that's the important thing is NSSL never did that. They never issued warnings or watches. Well, actually, local forecast offices issue warnings, but they never issued any watches of any sort.
Right.
And that's kind of what I need to point out.
Right. In addition to watches and warnings, one of the main reasons that the Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton characters were so bent on increasing the lead time was because of, obviously, her father's death in the beginning of the movie. They said that the averages were as bad as 3 minutes for alerting people of these sort of phenomenon and getting to shelter. While we're not perfect at predicting these sorts of events, we've always had better than, well, at that time of the movie, we had better than 3 minutes of lead time. I mean, obviously it's increased as our knowledge has increased over the past few years. I don't know the average, but I mean, it's upwards of 15, 20, even 30 minutes. And now we're getting into the problem of, is there too much lead time where people are getting in their cars and trying to drive away when they're really driving into danger?
Yep. So it's very important to keep in mind. So, folks, thank you very much for joining us this semester. This is our last show of the semester. That's important to point out. This is my last show ever.
Yeah.
And taking over in my place as weather director is this wonderful gentleman here, Sean Bailey. Congratulations, Sean.
Thanks, Dan.
I hope you do very well next semester. And so if you have any ideas for the cold front, any things that you would like to see or learn about, please let us know. valpovutv@gmail.com to let Sean know, because I won't have to worry about this anymore. And the crew next semester, I know they'll do a fantastic job.
Yeah,
we got good people here.
We have a really good, I mean, VUTV weather is by far one of the best. And we're going to continue to bring you guys great programming, especially with regards to what's going on with weather.
That's what I like to hear. All right, so for the final time, for the cold front, I'm Dan Giroux.
And I'm Sean Bailey. Have a great day.